Hi there. In the last episode, I talked about finding your purpose. Now, for some people, they feel that there is no purpose for them, that you just go through life, you do your job, your business, your career, whatever it might be, and that's your life. Whereas other people are drawn to a state of feeling that, no, actually, there has to be something more to life. There has to be something more that I'm here to do, that there's a reason or a purpose or a meaning for my life to be here. And in the last episode, I spoke about, well, how can you find your purpose? And the techniques or the methodology that I gave are some of the elements of what I work through with clients. And it's these methodologies that help people to find what it is that their true purpose is. What is it that best suits them for what it is that they're here for, and what is their business or their career to be wrapped around what their purpose is. And I also spoke about in an earlier episode by way of the different states of being that we actually go through. But there was two particular states. First of all, there was the state of belief and the state of knowing. And in between these two states, there's a critical line that shows up, or a critical threshold, as what sometimes I refer to it as. And it's when people are moving from the state of belief into a state of knowing that this critical line shows up, but it causes an inner anxiousness or an unease or a nervousness within the individual itself. So what I want to go through today is literally just some of the elements that come up as a person is transitioning or trying to make sense of this transition from going from a state of belief to a state of knowing and then moving on to higher states. And it's this inner fight that goes on between wanting to hang on to the older state, which is the state of belief, however, wanting to move into the much higher state, which is the state of knowing. And I discussed some of the elements that show up in people's lives as they're making this transition. But I want to drill down a little bit more deeper for that. And what I explained was that it's a bit like you've got one individual, but the person is split in two. And one half of that person wants to stay in the old world of the state of belief, whereas the other half of the person wants to move into the much higher world, which is the state of knowing. And it's these two worlds that create this split individual within the one person. And what's actually happening is that inside what's happening is that the state of consciousness or the how the person has been operating for many, many years is fighting to hang on to the old world of how it worked and how it went around, how it did business or how it did their career or developed different things and brought about different things into their life. Whereas the other part of themselves is fighting and wanting to move towards a much easier way of doing things. So these two worlds are created by the sense of, on one side, you've got conscious thinking, and then on the other side, you've got unconscious thinking. Now, as I explained again in previous episodes, ultimately what the executive code does is working from the executive center in the brain to connect with the unconscious mind, and therefore also then to connect with the superconscious. So it's this unconscious part of us that's taking in a huge amount of information, and it's helping to guide us throughout our daily lives. However, the conscious thinking part of ourselves is trying to control everything by way of planning, by way of trying to figure out and work out a way of how it's going to achieve going from A to Z, or its goals or objectives, or what it is that it's setting its mind on. Now, this inner fight that goes on is literally trying to teach us and trying to guide us towards a much easier way of living, which is working from the unconscious mind. So the more we try and control, and the more we try and plan and try and think about how things should take place, is going to cause more angst within ourselves. And the more we surrender and pass over to being led by the unconscious part of ourselves, which is connected to the superconscious, the more we allow ourselves to be led by that part of ourselves, the easier life becomes. Now, it's a very, very difficult thing for people to get their heads around, but equally it's very, very and extremely difficult to operate from, because let me put it this way, you've been living a particular way for so many years, and now you're being presented with a way, well, how do I live in this completely different way going forward? And ultimately it's about changing our habits or changing our routines of how we've done things in the past. So like with anything new, it's unnerving, it's unsettling. And there may have been things that you've tried to do in the past by way of trying to do something new, which has been unnerving and has been unsettling. And until such times it becomes a routine, it takes a bit of time and it takes a bit of practice. So what I want to help you to do is to understand what's going on right now at the moment for yourself inside those, between those two states, and ultimately understanding and recognizing the symptoms about where you need to be moving to, or where you're being inwardly guided towards. So ultimately it's about forming new habits and a new way of doing things. You've been doing the way you've worked for such a long time that it's a case of now, how do you create those new habits, or how do you create those new routines in your life? But let me put it this way. Let me give an example. When in the past you've been working on a problem and you're consciously thinking a way of figuring out that particular problem, to find an answer, to find a solution, and for whatever reason you just can't work out what the solution is to that particular problem, and you've been working on it for days, if not weeks, if not longer than that, and you still can't come up with the solution to your problem because you're again consciously thinking about it. But then lo and behold, you wake up one morning, and as you're brushing your teeth or having your shower or whatever it might be, you're going through your daily routine, what actually happens is that you get an inspired thought into your mind. And for other people, sometimes it can happen from the perspective you get woken up during the night. Sometimes typically between 3 o'clock in the morning and 4 o'clock in the morning. All of a sudden you're fast asleep, but then you get awakened by this inspired thought. Ultimately what's happening is that the unconscious mind has been working on that problem and trying to give you the solution to that problem. Hence the reason why it's giving you that inspired thought as you're going about doing something else that's completely routine. So this is just an example of, for you to get your mind around what it is that the unconscious mind does and how it works and how it communicates those inspired thoughts to yourself. So when you understand it from that perspective, then you realize, actually, okay, so if you hand it over to the unconscious mind, well, then we're tapping into that amazing power of infinite possibilities in order to solve whatever problems that we're actually trying to solve, but equally in order to actually bring about whatever our goals, our objectives are that we're actually trying to make manifest. So if we were to stop consciously thinking and be led more by our unconscious, well, then life becomes an awful lot easier. Now, most people will refer to this as being your gut feeling or your intuition. And there will have been times that you will have had that gut feeling or that intuition piece or that inspired thought. And the question for you is to determine, well, the times that you followed those signals or those nudges or those gut feelings or those moments of intuition, those moments of inspired thought, the times when you followed it, what was the outcome? And I can pretty much guarantee that it was always for the positive. Whereas the times that you went against your intuition, your gut feeling, have typically, I would estimate, have also led to the negative part. In my experience, any single time that I've gone against my own intuition or my own gut feeling, it has literally come up and smacked me across the face by way of the impact it would actually have if I didn't follow my gut feeling. So what I'm encouraging to do is to look at how can you become more sensitive to your unconscious part of you, the unconscious part that's bringing in so much more information to yourself and processing so much more information, and how it communicates its message to you, to the executive center part of your brain, in order to guide you in absolutely every single thing that you do. So when we're in this moment of trying to figure out the old world of working our life and controlling our life from our conscious thinking part of ourselves, versus moving into a much different way of doing things, which is being led by our unconscious side or our intuition side or gut feeling, whatever terminology that sits best for you, or how you best understand it or can conceptualize how it works. The more you move into that, and the more you move from your conscious thinking into your unconscious thinking, the easier your life is actually going to be quite frank. So that moment of where you're moving from the state of belief into the state of knowing is that unease between, it's like moving between two different stools. It's so different. And what shows up in our lives is this inner sense of a restlessness, Because ultimately what's happening is our unconscious mind is trying to guide us towards something greater, something much bigger than ourselves. It's our purpose is what I described in the previous episode. And this inner restlessness is an inner feeling that, do you know what I'm doing right now doesn't feel right. Whatever I'm doing right now in my business or my career is I should be doing something different, or there's just unease in what it is that I'm doing. And you're being led to do something else. You're being led to explore a new avenue, different opportunities. Now, it may not be completely radical. It may just be a slight change in how you're doing your business or how you're developing your career. And ultimately, it's trying to guide you in a completely different not a completely different direction, but it's just a slightly different direction. In some people, that difference can be huge in the sense of where it's trying to guide them to. That can be huge. But in the vast majority of the cases, it's actually very, very slight. So this restlessness that we feel inside is actually trying to guide us towards that. If you were to listen to that feeling, it's a case of, look, you're doing something right now at the moment. It's not comfortable, so therefore let's do something else to be more comfortable. And so that's how that feeling of restlessness starts to come up. What also happens is we get a lack of focus or a lack of direction. That if we look at previously in your life, you may be in cases whereby you knew what you were doing in your business, you knew what you were doing in your career, you knew where you were going, what the position you were going to go for, how much turnover you were going to bring, how much products or services you were going to sell, all the kind of sort of things. That was very, very clear for you in relation to the vision that you would have had for your business or your career. But then in this moment where you're moving from a state of belief into a state of knowing, that lack of focus or that lack of direction starts to come up, because we start to question where we're going or what direction we should be going on. And ultimately what we're looking for is that image or that picture of where we should be heading, the new course for our business or for our career. So a lot of people spend a lot of time in actually searching out, what does that end image look like, or what does that end vision look like? And here's the hardest part for an awful lot of people to get their head around. You won't get that image for yourself. You won't get that end goal for yourself, because ultimately what your unconscious mind is trying to teach you is to trust your unconscious mind and to know what it is that it's guiding you towards, and to literally just have complete faith in your unconscious mind guiding you towards that. If it was to give you a vision or an image or a direction or an end goal, well then, the fun is taken out of it, which again I spoke about the game of life and the snakes and ladders, talking from the perspective of life is a game. The more we are given that end goal or that end picture, well then the fun is gotten out of our game of life. So that's the reason why it doesn't give an end image. And the whole purpose of it, or part of the purpose, is to get you moving towards actually just to surrender and to trust that you're being guided every single step of the way. But the more you flick back to working from your conscious mind, well then the more things are going to be distracting, more unnerving, more anxious, all the kind of sort of things. So all those negative emotions will start to appear. The more you trust and have faith of your unconscious mind, of where you're actually being guided to inwardly, the more easier it is for things to happen. Another sense of a feeling that comes up is this sense of that I'm at a crossroads. Now, whether in your mind you can picture a crossroads or whether it's a Y junction, whatever that image is for you, but it's this sense of an inner feeling of I either go down one path or I go down the other path, and it's trying to decide which path I go on. Now, I'm going to talk a little bit about this in a future episode, but it's just this inner feeling of trying to make a choice. And some choices are an awful lot easier to make, whereas other choices become a lot more difficult to actually make, because it's perhaps maybe having that leap of faith of what it is that you're being guided to move into or what you're being drawn to move into. So it's just that sense of trying to make a decision or trying to figure out, well, what path do I take, or what's the route that I should take in my life or in my business or my career, whatever it might be. It's just that sense of being at a crossroads. Now, what this can lead to as well is just sense of being depressed, or being that there's, what is the point in my life? There's just this meaninglessness, if I can pronounce that correctly. But it's just sense of trying to find meaning in our life, but not actually finding it. And it's a case of, I'm not being fulfilled. What is the point in life? And these are the kind of questions that start to come up as you shift from a state of belief to a state of knowing. And in the sense of, what's the purpose, or what's my meaning, why am I here, or what's the point of it? And wanting, perhaps in some respects, trying to check out, and just feeling of lack of motivation in what it is that you're doing. And you could be working a business or working your career, and over a period of time, you're kind of saying, actually, you know what, I don't enjoy what I'm doing anymore. I don't get the same buzz or the same fulfillment or that same sense of that I'm making a difference, or I'm getting meaning from the business or the career that you've been creating for either a number of years or quite a long period of time. It's this, really what's happening is you're being shifted over to actually a different track and being asked to pivot your business or to pivot your career to go in a different direction. And in that moment, when we start to question, well, what is it that I'm doing, and why do I not get any fulfillment or meaning from what it is that I'm doing? If we didn't have those feelings, it wouldn't cause us to change a new direction. Hence the reason why that feeling is coming up. All these feelings ultimately is a feedback mechanism to ourselves that we're not living in equilibrium. We're not living in our purpose. We're not living in the way that we're meant to be living. So all these emotions are literally feedback mechanisms to ourselves from our unconscious mind to literally guide us in a new direction. What also tends to come up is this fear and this anxiety of, what does the future hold and where am I going? And again, those feelings and emotions are there to guide us in a slightly different line or different track. Other emotions that also start to come up is just this feeling of, actually, you know what? I'm doing this business and I'm doing this career, but I just feel like I'm on a treadmill, that literally I'm just going from day to day to day to day to day. And all I'm doing is either just paying the bills or just doing what my business or what my career is. And this feeling just being on a treadmill or on this being constant on a hamster wheel are, again, the kind of things that come up between these two states of belief and knowing. Some people feel as well that they have a sense of being an imposter. And it's one of the other things that leads into that feeling of an imposter syndrome, whereby we're presenting to the outside world that everything's fine, everything's great, and we're on top of things, and we're able to control everything in our life and everything within our business and our career, and we're performing at our best. But inwardly, we have all these questions going up in our life and showing up and wanting us to go in a different, and to search out in what it is that we're supposed to be doing and where we're supposed to be going. So that feeling of feeling like an imposter starts to show up more so in between these two particular states. But ultimately what's happened is that there's an inner desire of wanting to make an impact. And you'll see this build up within an individual of looking at maybe volunteer work or looking to try and make more of an impact in other people's lives. And it's that guidance towards, we want to make an impact. We want to have a legacy or to leave a legacy. We want to develop something for ourselves in order to make a difference and to be remembered in other people's lives. And there's this question that I'm just not living my full potential, and that we're here for a much more bigger reason, that you're here to literally achieve much, much more. And believe me, every single person that I come across, there is so much more that they're absolutely here to achieve. It's just phenomenal what the potential is for them when I see their purpose and I see the image of where they're supposed to be. The potential for them is absolutely phenomenal. So it's no surprise to me when I hear somebody coming to me and said, I just not feel I'm not reaching my full potential, because the gap that I can see between where they are, either in their business and career, even though they may be massively successful in their business or career, the gap between that and the potential that they're absolute to achieve is phenomenal. It's just amazing what they're being guided towards and what that image looks like from my perspective. When a person's going through this period of time, it's a case of they just can't put their finger on what they should be doing. And therefore those searching questions start to show up by way of, what does the image of what it is that I'm supposed to be doing look like? I can't put my finger on it, but they're guided towards something greater, but they can't put their finger on it. And hence the reason why they do a lot of different activities and they read a lot of different books and go on different courses and travel around the world trying to find themselves or find what it is that they're supposed to be doing, and waiting for somebody to tell them what it is that they're supposed to be doing in their life. Now, it's easy for me because I get those images for people. But for other people where they can't get that direction for themselves, that can be extremely unnerving. So they can go through long periods of time and trying to search for themselves of what it is that they're supposed to be doing, and they still can't put their finger on it. But in the previous episode, I explained a little bit more about what you can actually do to try and find that for yourself, and what is it that your internal priorities are saying, what is it that your telos is, what your purpose is, and so on. So there's ways of you can actually find that out for yourself that's very, very quick and very, very easy in order to actually get you that sense of direction for yourself. But these are just some of the symptoms that show up in people's lives. Now, when I'm working with my clients, and I actually explained this in the first book that I wrote, and first book called Evolve, and I gave the analogy of the feather, the brick, and the truck. Now, ultimately what's happening, I use this analogy because it gives the message very, very quickly across for people. Now, if you can imagine you've got a feather, and you can also imagine brick, and you can also imagine truck. So let me describe each one of them and ultimately what's happening. So if you can imagine the feather, the feather is so light. You can imagine the touch of a feather is so light. Ultimately what happens is the unconscious mind is trying to give us nudges. It's trying to guide us in a particular way. It's trying to direct us in a particular way. And it starts off with the likes of the feather, meaning just those light touches. Now, how it comes about in our life is that we get that inspired thought, or we get ideas into our mind of what it is that we should be doing. And it can be just an action, or just something that we maybe should be send an email over to somebody, or make a phone call, or some thought that comes in our mind saying that, oh my God, wouldn't it be great if I did X in my business? And then we just forget about those thoughts. We just either don't take note of them, we don't write them down, or we just ignore them and we just move on to something else. We just forget about them. So those feathers, those nudges that come as feathers, can come as ideas or inspiration, or we could be having a conversation with somebody and the person passes a comment and something within ourselves lights up from the comment that's just been passed, and we just get this, again, the surge of energy within ourselves saying, oh my God, maybe I should be doing something, or there's something that they said that makes a difference for ourselves inwardly or internally. We could be watching a movie or reading a book, or just in this group and having a conversation, and whatever the conversation is taking place, something can happen within that conversation that gets a surge within ourselves to say, actually, you know what, maybe I should take note of what's been said, write it down or take action or whatever it is. But again, if we ignore it, we just forget about it and we just move on throughout our day. But they're so light that it's like the touch of a feather. Now, if we don't listen to the feathers, the brick comes along. Now, you can imagine the brick is a little bit more subtle than a feather. Now, the brick shows up in the format of a sickness. Now, it can be a temporary sickness. We can get over it, but it can hold us back or impact us for a short period of time. It can be in our business. It could be the loss of a big client that we need a long period of time to recover from. That, you know, there's some clients that we could lose within a business whereby it could take months and months and months in order to actually recover from that loss of income. And because of that, it actually stops us in our track in what we're actually doing. It could be the accident that literally has us laying down in bed or in hospital trying to figure out and trying to just stopping what we're doing. So therefore, we can't do our business or we can't do our career building. It's literally we're confined to our bed, whether it be at home or in a hospital. And it's those weeks or months that we're actually just given the space to start looking inwardly and thinking and contemplating of a better life and so on. And these are just things that they kind of set us back, but we can overcome them relatively easily. But it does leave a mark, I have to say. Now, if we don't listen to the brick and we don't listen to the feathers, well, the truck comes along. And believe me, in my experience and working with so many different people over the years, you don't want the truck to come along. Because the truck shows up in the form of a divorce, a separation, a redundancy in a career, whereby it's been thrown upon us and we have to make a change. It's that serious illness that, unlike, say, the accident or the previous sickness that we may have had before by way of the brick, this serious illness literally does stop us in our tracks. And in some cases, we can overcome it, or other cases, literally, we have to live with that illness for the rest of our days. It could be the business failure. It could be literally everything is being stripped away from us. And that's the truck. It literally just stops us completely and firmly in our tracks. And we have to do something completely radically different at that stage. Now, there are the three types of unconscious signals or unconscious nudges that happen in people's lives. And I've seen them so many times as I've observed and as I've worked with different clients over the years. So again, just keeping that in mind by way of, okay, the feathers or the bricks or the trucks. Now, I'm sure there's been moments in your life where you have encountered feathers, bricks and trucks, and it'd be good to actually remember each one of those that actually showed up in your life, and for you to recall and find the evidence in your own life and recognize, oh my God, I did have those inspired thoughts, but I never did anything about them. Or maybe you did get the inspired thoughts and you did do something about them and they turned out to be extremely fruitful. Or the bricks have shown up in your life, and trying to identify, well then what have been those bricks that have showed up in your life? And, if trucks have come your way, well then identify what those trucks are and what was it trying to guide you towards, or what was the change that it was asking you to do in your life in order to bring your path in a completely different way. Now, when you followed them, when you followed the bricks and the trucks and the feathers, when you did take action from the inspired thoughts, well then I can pretty much guarantee that it did work out. But when you didn't, well then what was the impact? What happened in your life, or what was the difference in your life when you didn't follow those nudges? And right now, it'd be actually worth to start to think about, well then, if there's any feathers, bricks or trucks showing up in your life right now at the moment, what is it trying to guide you towards? What direction is it trying to bring you to? Now, we're all going through this COVID-19 pandemic right now at the moment. And I can absolutely say, in a sense that I got from the very, very start of when this happened, in the first couple of weeks of when the pandemic hit, was this sense of, this is actually calling people forward to step into their purpose, to step up into what it is they're absolutely meant to be doing here. Now, when I ran a webinar series, and I said this in the first, if it wasn't the first webinar, it was the second webinar, and I expressed the feeling that I got from a point of view of this pandemic, while it's having a major impact on everybody right across the world, my sense of it all was that part of what was coming out of the pandemic was that it was actually getting people to step up into their power, for them to reach their full potential and to step into their purpose. And the weeks that followed, the conversations that started to unfold and the conversations that I started to develop with new people that were coming my way, and feeling of, oh, where am I going? What's happening in my business, or what's happening in my career? It was this inner desire for them to actually do something slightly different or completely different within their business or within their career. So for me, I saw this actually play out and happen by way of, oh my God, it is actually asking people to step up into their purpose. So when you look at your space right now at the moment and where you are in your business or your life, what is it that you're being called towards? What is it that it's asking you to change? And what has been that inner desire for yourself to do differently, to move towards something differently? And while a lot of us are working remotely or working from home, or, the new working remotely, but while we're in this space of literally, for some people, they do get time out to say, actually, what am I doing? Or maybe I should change things of how I'm doing things either in my business or in my life or in my career. It's giving people that space to ask those questions and to contemplate of what it is that they're supposed to be doing. And before, we all get back to, for want of a better word, the new normal. As I said, there is no such thing as a normal. But as we move back and into our lives again, and things start to open up again, how different do you want your life to be? And if you were to listen closely to what those nudges are saying to you, what your unconscious mind is actually trying to communicate with you, it's actually asking you right now at the moment, how do you want your life to be different? How do you want your business or your career to be different? What have you suppressed within yourself that you wanted to express over many, many years, but just haven't had that ability to actually achieve, or finding a way of actually going after what it is that you're being drawn towards? Ask yourself those kind of questions. But next, once you've gotten a sense of what that new direction is for you, well then, what is it that you need to do to take action? What are the steps that you need to take right now at the moment? Just those first few steps. What's the action that you need to take? Now, in some cases, maybe just reaching out to somebody, or in some cases, maybe actually, I need to change my messaging about what it is that I do in my business. Whatever it is for you, whatever comes up for you. And the more you surrender and allow to be guided by your unconscious, the more it's going to give you those inspired thoughts to give you what are the next actions that you're to take. But for some people, it holds them back. So the question I have for you then is, well, what is actually holding you back? And if you're able to pinpoint what's actually holding you back, once you can identify it, then something can be done about it, meaning an action or something can be done in order to dissolve what it is that's actually holding you back. Because there's no doubt you're to step into your purpose. There's no doubt that if you're listening to this particular episode and you're listening to previous episodes of what I've been guiding you towards and moving towards you stepping into who you are, stepping into your purpose, stepping into your absolutely achieving your full potential. If you're absolutely listening to this, it means that your inner questioning is literally getting you to try and move onto a track for you, your purpose, for you to live your purpose, for you to reach your full potential, for you to literally make manifest your full potential, whether it be in your business or in your career. That's what you're here for. So what is it that's holding you back? And when you decide and you can specify and identify what it is that you're holding you back, well, then you can go about dissolving it. Then you can go about getting over that obstacle of what you perceive is actually holding you back. These are just some of the questions that you can ponder for yourself. The more you ponder, they're very specific questions, but the more you ponder on them and look for the inward answer. So the inward answer, what I mean by that is communicating with your unconscious. Don't consciously think about the answers to these questions. Unconsciously summon up the answers to the questions. And the more you ponder on them and seek the answers to the questions, well then the more you're going to be guided. And it's taking that leap and that move towards that stage of knowing and moving up to much, much higher states. So until next episode, I wish you every success.